Okay, today's video we're going to talk about how to get around the age restrictions and income targeting restrictions, which are the big ones that affect a lot of campaigns. If you're dealing with anything in the housing, credit loan, job, or employment spaces, so that you could still get your campaigns to work like they sort of used to. And if you're in this category and you're just starting out and you've seen this restriction, I'm going to explain what your basic opportunities are to deal with this, given it is actually and really was an important consideration before the restrictions came up, and how you can get just as good of results or get a major edge really on all your competition, because they don't have what I'm going to share with you on this video to narrow down the targeting to the meat of where most of the profit comes from in these spaces. Okay, so there definitely is a workaround. Anybody could do this. I give you a turnkey way to be able to do this, and I also touch on how much of a difference this is actually going to make on your campaigns profit-wise at the end of the day. So, respectively, it is a make or break being able to do this. A lot of times, if you don't do it, you can't make money, whereas if you do it, you're in the profitable territory. It really is that important. So, anyway, with all that said, I'm going to get into the basic background behind what the restrictions are there for, why they're important to try to get around them, and then I'll get into the actual strategy. So first of all, I made this video because not only do a lot of prospective clients, when they initially reach out to our firm asking for help with their PPC, ask me about the restrictions, how to deal with it, given that it basically they were able to do before they didn't have the restrictions. It seemed to have their stuff work better. I made this because I wanted to tell other people that what most people don't know, that basically don't ask me that question. In other words, know that the age and income demographics are important to use, is the best leads come from 1/2 to 1/3 of the age ranges or income demographic ranges out there in at least half of the markets anymore. And they're, in general, the people that were saying that they did know this before, were able to a lot of times make money before they had these restrictions come up. And they're coming to me actually saying, what is the other options? Because I can't get my campaigns to basically work until I can so-called, if you want to call it, discriminate again, so to say, and actually only have my ads show up for somebody who's in a certain income demographic range or age range, okay? Or a combination thereof. They kind of actually are similar in that income demographic skews with age as well, as you can imagine. But so anyway, with all that said, I'm going to show you basically how, first of all, you're talking about 2 to 3 times more money that you're going to make in a lot of markets in the loan space specifically. Also, if you're posting for any kind of employment related stuff, same thing. 1/2 to 1/3 of the amount of money being able to, just on this income demographic and age demographic range, being able to filter your campaigns down, given that so much of it's going to be waste of your ads are going to be waste otherwise. And now that it could be really a blessing for you, given that Google has and Bing has these restrictions both on running your campaigns now, that the workaround, they don't know the workaround. Actually, respectively, most of this is for Google, but some of what I'm going to give you will work for Bing too. That they're not going to see this video, you're going to have it, now you're going to have your edge. So basically, you're going to make 2 or 3 times as much money, and then hopefully there's a lot of people that would be competing against you that are not going to be able to compete against you anymore, and maybe even in some spaces make more than the half, the 2 to 3x, once you got these filtering options back in place through the workaround method that I have for you if you're in housing, credit, loans, jobs, or employment. So respectively though, even if you're not in one of these spaces, housing, credit, loans, job, employment, so on and so forth, where these income demographics and age demographic restrictions come into play. Also, it's gender as well, but I'm not speaking about that because that doesn't make it's not as big of a thing as these first two where people really put a hit on your results. Anymore, about half of the markets out there, I touched on this a minute ago, are going to be strongly affected by the income demographic and the age demographic settings on your PPC account. So even in markets where there is no restrictions, about half of those markets you can at least double your results if you knew how to dial in just the age and the income demographic settings to the portion of your account that's actually making money. And if you don't know what portion that is, you can always right away, if you're in business for a while, go into your books and find out your list of customers and upload your list of customers to Facebook or to Google and see through the audience insights which way that they skew. In general, that goes for the age at least. There's companies where there's data companies where you could give them a list of your customers by name and then their email address or their phone number, and they will tell you about how old they are, of course, and the income range. It's called data enhancement or expansion companies. You can Google for that, and respectively, you can find out of your customers. Basically, there should be about a third of the income demographics and income and age demographics or at least half where most of your 80% of your customers are coming from. And with that, you can narrow down your ads and get a lot more out of them. These two are such a powerful set of filtering or targeting options inside the account. They're really key. So, beyond the keywords and stuff, really should be focusing on that. And if you don't have the data, you go get it. And if you still can't get the data, you hook up revenue tracking to your ad account so you could see at least once you've started, you're starting to spend money on PPC, you're not making what you want. It'll be only a matter of time till you get what you want, because you're going to accumulate data about which age demographics and income demographics bought and how much the ROI was on each range. 45 to 55, 55 to 65, 65 plus. And same thing with the income. It's demographics, top 10%, 10 to 20%, 20 to 30% from the top. And seeing physically how much the profit is from each one of those, so you can figure out the half, to 2/3 to actually just cut out and leave the rest, because there'll basically be no opportunity to make the ROI that you expect from half of it if you're in one of those half or so of the markets out there where this happens to be the case. So even if you're not in one of these markets and you're watching this video anyway, that you should definitely take a look at your customer data and see how the income and age demographic targeting should be set up in your Google and Bing, and or just make sure you have purchase tracking, or if you're generating leads, you have what is called offline conversion tracking to get the revenue from the leads you have and whether those leads turn into a sale or not back into your ad account, so you can over time eventually figure it out and cut out the half to 2/3 basically that's not going to produce the ROI that you're looking for. So you keep the rest of it, and then you've got a high producing account from then on. So anyway, whereas it's true that you can't filter the age or income demographics anymore if you're in one of these categories here. There is a way to get around it inadvertently. Now, there's no way to actually turn it back on. That's not what I'm implying here. But as a second option, right away, you have the ability to use zip codes to get around these options. And now, I know this is going to be time consuming, but there's also data companies out there that can help you with this. Or you can get a data entry person that there's public data on every zip code, which way the income and which way the age demographics skew in those zip codes. And so if you want mostly, you got to have people, because before the restrictions were there, you knew you had to have people in the top 20% of income demographics. You could go out there and find the zip codes that skew a majority to, the higher income demographics. And of course, on the age demographic side, the same thing, which ones have mostly at least half the age general demographics that you want. Okay, and respectively, the income targeting demographics that Google has, by the way, is built off of the publicly available income demographics of people by zip code anyway, like census data or whatnot. So they don't actually have your income on each Google user that has a Google login. They don't have the income demographics on each person. They buy data from other companies, so where they could technically get it, but respectively, it's mostly driven off of this. It's spread out. You're actually targeting people on a zip code type basis because they don't actually have. It's hard to get the income demographic data for a lot of people. You can get some of it, maybe 20 or so, 30% or so out there where you could publicly find, if you had like going back to the list of customers to find out what the average income ranges are of your customers so you could target them. If you go to another company, they're not going to find the entire list, but they might be able to find 10 to 30%, and you can use that as a sample of the whole list to kind of know where you need to go. So Google's doing this anyway. You just got to be able to manually filter out the zip codes that don't have the type of age ranges or income demographic ranges that you want. So pretty simple there. Zip codes do actually vary a lot on the age and demographic settings. Way more than what you would think once you dig into it. So this is actually by itself a really, really good method to get around needing to filter out half to 2/3 of the age and or income demographic settings for your account to make sure your campaigns in these markets here are successful and profitable, or profitable enough to meet your standards and hit your margins and whatnot. That said, there's also, you can go further here if this doesn't get you enough data, because obviously this is not as good as actually knowing to a T exactly what each person's exact income is and exact age is, instead of just having a general spread of based upon what's publicly known about people in that zip code that you could find through City Data, which is a website, or other websites like that where you can type in average age demographics of zip code 51442, and then you'll put it out, and then you can check each zip code in your target area and find the ones that have a certain percentage above a certain mark in which that you're basically targeting the most richest zip codes, the top 10 or 20% most richest zip codes, top 10 or 20% of zip codes that have older people, whatnot. And there are, as a side thing too, there's other web databases out there where you can actually, instead of doing this manually, you can find what are the richest zip codes. That data is easy to find. Which zip codes has the most oldest people? You can also, if you just Google for this information, a lot of it's free. If not, you can manually build that data. And then there's some data brokers out there you may be able to find as well. If you type in top 10% of age demographics by zip code, data brokers at the end, then maybe you'll find somebody that has that data that they can lease to you, that they charge for that data and it updates on a regular basis. Because obviously what it is, 1 year, 5 years from now, it won't be the same. Well, anyway, you get the point. If you layer on this will take you so far. It's actually way, way head over heels better, knowing if there's only 1/3 of the age or income demographics that are actually going to be profitable at your margins and level of ROI that you want. This will get you, basically halfway there, just with making sure you have the right zip code singled out. Okay, to get you mostly the right age range and mostly the right income ranges that you want. Now, you can also layer on what are called audience segments to your filtering of your ads there, and it gets even better, much better actually, in fact. So what I mean by that is, a lot of people still don't know you can do this with your ads. Under the audience tab, when you're in your Google Ads account, this is just one for Google Ads. So the first method up here with the zip codes, that's Google or Bing. Both of you can do it on both. On Google has audience segments set up, at least to where you can do things in detail like this. We'll just say that and you can click, basically edit audience segments. And you basically there'll be different, they call it in-market segments or affinity segments. Just trying to remember how they exactly phrase that. Affinity segments is, I still think, what they call that. Anyway, there's different audiences of people that they have. So basically what it is Google has all of their users, the people that have a Gmail account at least or whatever, and they try to profile each person on their list. So when you target people on Google search, you can target people on Google search, but only if they have, this trait or this trait or this trait as well. If I want to target people looking for new golf clubs, but only if, they like going on golf vacations, knowing that's a higher value prospect, in which it could probably make an ROI there, given the high prices of clicks for new, golf bags. But if they're just looking for golf bags and I don't know that about them, then, based upon the price of the traffic, I can't reach the level of ROI I need to be profitable with the campaign. Google gives us basically thousands and thousands of ways to filter the search campaign traffic that we have so that we can do that. And so we can filter it enough to where it will be profitable and we'll just leave all the rest. So it's not, things have went way beyond just keyword targeting now. And with their machine learning algorithms and if you're doing automated bidding, that's what they're doing. They're looking at millions of data points on their users. And when you say you are targeting, these 10 keywords, they look at the type of people that convert, and then basically look at all the one of millions of traits that these people have, and then learn, these traits are the most common. So if they don't actually have these traits when they search for this keyword in the future, then don't have the keyword, don't have your ad show up and have another person's ad show up. Okay, so it's called audience segments. And what you do, if you're trying to get somebody that's older, because most of the people, when they're doing age restrictions, it's 95% of the time they need somebody older, because older people have the money. It's just the way that it is. There's a in-market segment that's or affinity audience, I think it is, one or the other. It's just retirement. And so what you can do when you go ahead into the menu to edit audience segments within your campaign, your search campaign, you can type in just the word retirement in the search bar there, and then it'll pop up. That one right there has a list size of 1 to 5 billion potential impressions a week. Not actual people, but it's enough people that basically if you only wanted people that are, let's say 50 plus age range, actually it would be 55 plus, because the age ranges on Google is 45 to 55 and then 55 to 64 or whatever, and then 65 plus. If you wanted to be over, let's say 50 in general, then you could do your income targeting thing, which is one layer of targeting and filtering that you do. But then you also layer on an audience segment, and you basically, unless they are also in this retirement segment, then your ad will not show up, which adds a lot more certainty that that person's obviously older. Okay, so for age demographics target filtering, that's a really good way to do it. I don't recommend it all on its own, but combine it with the income targeting, and it works basically as good as being able to actually say to Google, I only want 50 plus in the, where you could actually filter down the age demographics and filter out the ones you want. So, but with that said, what these audience segments are supposed to do is it's supposed to set up, and you're supposed to be able to bid less or more on these audience segments for your set keywords in your search campaign. And so what you can do, if you only want them to see your ad if they're in this retirement category, this retirement audience segment, if you will, then what you can do is you can bid plus 900%, and then all your keywords themselves reduce the bids by roughly 900%. Then basically your keywords will be, your bids will be so low, you will need manual bidding to do this, obviously. I use enhanced bidding myself on all the search campaigns we manage because it allows the most control with a little bit of intelligence on, having some of Google's data back what we're doing. But in general, and for this to really work the best way, I would probably say, and you're in this situation, use manual bidding without enhanced CPC, even though enhanced CPC is not that bad, but you go negative 900% in your bids, and then the keywords won't have a high enough bid to be eligible to be shown, unless now they're in this retirement audience segment as well, because automatically you're saying, I'll bid 900% more if they're in this retirement audience segment, but if they're not, I'm not. Whereas if they're not in the retirement audience segment, you're bidding too low to have the ad show up at all. But if they are, now you're bidding high enough suddenly that where it is eligible to show. You follow my whole logic there. So that's a really good way to get around the age demographic targeting. And there's, actually I don't know how many audience segments there are, but there's a lot. Thousands, I'm pretty sure. Hundreds, if not thousands. I'd like to know the actual amount sometime, but it's a lot. So where you could search for different ways to filter people out. I'm just telling you the most obvious ones the most common ones that I'm using, which is this retirement one that works really good for age demographic filtering out and getting people that are older where we can't use, the age demographic filter setting or age demographic settings because we're in one of these categories here. Now, if you're in the income, you're in the situation where you need to get the income demographic going for yourself and filter people down that have high income or might be lower income, doesn't matter. But 90% of the time plus, it's people needing the higher income demographics that can afford their product or service, that they really need to be able to see their search ads. And when they're not, in that top 10 to 20% or just top 10%, the ads are not going to be profitable because they'll turn into a lead, and then ultimately they'll close at like 1/8 the rate in which that they were in the top 10% or what have you. And if you're in that situation, in that case, I would recommend you add 3 different new audience segments to your campaign: luxury travelers, luxury shoppers, and luxury vehicles. The average weekly impressions for luxury travel is 1.1 to 5 billion, same as the retirement. Luxury shoppers is 100 billion impressions to 1 trillion impressions a week. These numbers, by the way, are pulled, this is assumed, 1 to 5 billion is from the display network. What it says, you would, in terms of how many ad impressions you could show to that person in that actual segment. And I know this is for search campaigns. It's just as a reference to how big these segments are. So when which is important in that if you sell red shoes and you're only bidding on the keyword red shoes and you're trying to filter them down on the second level, if you don't have a big audience segment, you're not going to have a whole lot of opportunity left. But because I'm showing you here that these segments have a lot, they're really huge segments. And Google has more data than you can ever imagine on different people. If they don't have it, like I said, they get it from third parties, and they can afford to spend a crap load of money getting it from all kinds of different apps and everything else that you're on to supplement what they know about you already. But for the income targeting, if you need somebody in the top 10 to 20% of income or just top 10% in general, I would add these 3, and then I would do the same thing as I told you before for the retirement one. Do a plus 900% bid adjustment if they are in one of these 3 segments here, and lower the bids on all our keywords by default by 900%, so that effectively our ad for our keyword is not going to trigger unless they're in one of these 3 segments. Going further than this, like I said, ultimately you should narrow down the zip codes that you target. So first of all, if they're not in a high demographic, income demographic zip code or a wealth pocket in the United States or whatever, like I call them, and then also if they're not one of these 3 known segments that they're interested in luxury products of some sort, my ad's not going to show up. And effectively, we just already mimicked the same thing as having top 10% income demographic setting ticked on our campaign like is available for everybody else that's not in these one restricted categories. So in general, that's generally what I'm going to use there. Okay, so there's a gimme. I gave you the exact formula for 90% of use cases of you guys that need to do filtering by age or income demographics. I want to add a couple other notes about this. You can, for some of you guys, might need a little bit different filtering or what have you. There's something called a custom segment. So basically, I love the fact that Google has done this. You can actually filter things down, not just by what audience segment that they're on, that Google has identified the users interested in buys or just interested heavily in luxury travel, that we can actually create a custom segment and say that if they're not interested in luxury travel and they're not interested in luxury shopping, then we don't want to target them at all. So in other words, it can be somebody who's in more than one category that we build into one audience that works as one audience segment that we're targeting. And you could do that as many as you want. You could do 3. So when you are going to add these audience segments to filter your search campaigns to get people that are in the higher income demographic, if you want to get it a little bit more fancy, get a little bit more precise, I would add each one of these audience segments. I give you luxury travelers, luxury shoppers, luxury vehicles, and then I would also add a custom audience which has luxury travelers and luxury shoppers together. Then I would add one more custom segment that's luxury shoppers and luxury vehicles. And then I would have one more custom segment that's luxury travelers and luxury vehicles. And then I would have one more custom segment that is luxury travelers, luxury shoppers, and luxury vehicles all together in one, 3 in 1. Why? Because so there's more and more confirmation of that person being a higher income person if they're on all 3 of these, obviously, than if they're just on one. Maybe they just like looking up for luxury travel. That's less likely if they're also interested in luxury travel and interested in luxury shopping. It's even more likely if they're interested in luxury travel, luxury shopping, and luxury vehicles, right? And this can go on for a while. And if you're in a high volume space like you're selling clothing, you can actually not just add these custom segments or these audience segments I gave you, but you can add a bunch more. And you can see how well that correlates with pulling you and getting you somebody that actually is in the upper income tiers and singling them out. For every market, this is going to work a little bit differently. So you can create these custom segments. I gave you the tutorial on that. But in general, apart from that, go ahead and inside the menu where you're going to add your audience segments, go through and do a little searching yourself. And if you want to get this is a little extra credit to make a little bit more money. You can add up to 500 of these audience segments and just have plus 0% bid adjustment. And then basically all that's going to happen as you run your campaigns is, assuming you have your conversion tracking set up, and if you're generating leads, you absolutely need your offline revenue tracking system set up, which you can search my video about this or check my blog for this. It basically tells you, and I touched on this just a minute ago on the same video, where you need to know if you generate a lead, if that lead turns into a sale, to really know, if on your campaigns whether your campaign worked or not. So you can, through offline conversion tracking and offline revenue, importing of revenue from offline through your online on your Google Ads account. Ultimately, what's going to happen is that as you run your ads on each one of these individual audience segments, it'll tell you how much sales revenue came from each segment. And it'll also tell you if you do convert. I like to adjust the columns and do conversion over spend or revenue, I think it is. One of those, either or. But basically, it's another way of saying ROI. And so you can see the ROI of people who are in each one of those 500 plus segments that you pulled in there. The more segments you have, the more you can eventually narrow down the segments that are better narrowing down the exact, top tier or mid tier or low tier income segment that you need, or the same thing with the age. Could also be the same thing with the gender as well in reality. So you make sure you get revenue and ROI tracking set up in your account, and it's possible no matter what business you have, even if you're offline business, completely offline, you need people to come into a brick and mortar is what I mean. You can track revenue that way through beacons if you search for that, and I've got videos about that. Get it into your account. You could start with, or you could just use the segments I gave you here to filter down people based upon them needing to be older or higher income. Or you can go ahead and add, there really isn't any limit that I've found. You can add 1,000 of these audience segments and then just see what happens. Respectively, maybe you'll filter the way that I gave you that I filter for age or income right away. But you also have 500 other audience segments, and you're just seeing what goes on with those. And then eventually, you'll know how to bid. There'll be certain ones you ultimately keep, and then specifically on each one, how much more you want to spend or how much less do you want to spend on each one of those to filter your traffic down, given you don't have the ability to filter on the age or income demographic level, given each of these audience segments will skew one way or the other in terms of the age and the income individually, as is any group of people would, as is each zip code will, okay? So hopefully you follow my entire point there. This whole using the audience segments and then going up and down in bids, but first adding like 1,000 of them and then running your ads and then having the system tell you exactly what the ROI is of each one and then singling some out gives you a huge edge on your competitors once you have enough data to make really strong, statistically significant decisions on what your bid should be if they fall into one of those audience segments as they search for your keywords. So, and going back to what I've said many times in my videos before, it's not a matter of if you're going to make PPC work, it's a matter of when. You stay in the game long enough and you have all these audience segments, it's going to tell you what segment of the people who search for keywords that are matching the customers you need are going to get you the 800% ROI that you need, and there's certain segments that won't. And so there might be 20% of the people who search for your keywords that'll get you an 8-to-1 return, and the rest won't. And the system's going to tell you exactly what traits they have that will get you the 8-to-1, and other ones that aren't, and you're just going to be able to filter them out using what is called a bid adjustment formula. You'll be able to tell exactly how much you need to reduce your bid to get your 8-to-1 return for people who fit that specific audience segment, or if they're going to do, if they're actually giving you over an 8-to-1 return on that individual audience segment, you can bid a little bit more and really milk that one for all it's worth, given it's good for you. So this goes beyond. My point is age and income demographic targeting that this video was specifically about. You can use these audience segments to make a lot more money with any kind of search campaign, and something that frankly virtually no people are doing. And if they are doing it, they're just doing it really haphazardly, randomly. You do this right, you're going to get a good amount of profit for your campaigns. And why spend money on if you're going to spend money on the ads, half the value is the data and what the data can tell you about what works versus what doesn't work and to what degree it works. So you can, once you've eventually got so much data accrued, you can get more out of your results just through a process of elimination. A lot of people don't look at it that way, but it certainly is the case. You're getting half the value is from the customers, half is the value that is going to tell you how you're going to get more customers in the future. And a good PPC strategist will use all that data to consistently get you more results, so your results go up and to the right all the time, because you get more and more certainty about exactly what 10 or 20% of the people that that are searching for what you're searching at any time and using the keywords you have in your search campaigns are actually profitable for you and which ones are not thereof. So anyway, that's the whole thing in a nutshell. Hopefully that helps you get your campaigns profitable again if you're one of these categories, or just to take things to another level. As I said, you would in the start of this video. Apart from that, if you have any questions or comments about doing the strategy for yourself, leave me a comment down below. I get back to every single person who leaves me a comment on this channel within a day or two time, personally. If you like money-making PPC strategies, you can see that I've got a ton of other videos on this channel, hundreds. Tell you a lot about making money with PPC, a lot more than what I could have ever mentioned on today's video. I should check those out if you're into that type of content. It's the best content on YouTube that you can find about making PPC money-making strategies. I have a blog at guarantpppc.com/blog with step-by-step instructions on how to build campaigns the way that I build them for our clients here to guarantee the results. And if you want information along those kind of lines, you can find it there. But apart from that, I think I covered it all. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you on my next video that should be coming out in another day or two in the future as well. See you there.